You are listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud, conversations about trauma and healing from two women who are doing the work.
Hey everyone, it's Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. And today, Sher and I are going to process trauma out loud.
There we go.
Are you ready for that, Sher?
Around.
Oh, it's just been such a pleasure to do this with you, Sher. I mean, are we over 2 years now?
Oh yeah, way over 2 years. I don't even know what episode we're on, but
Yeah.
yes.
I think it's interesting that neither one of us really keep track is because we actually just really enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
We've noticed that it helps us, right? Just in real time processing things. We just spent an hour processing through different topics. And then when we hear from our listeners, we're just so grateful, that it can help people find language or maybe give them something to think about or find the courage to get help. That's huge. And I just want to take a minute and thank all of our listeners for listening and just being on this journey with us. Today, we are going to start a new topic. It's something that we've talked about, but we have a few thoughts that we want to share on why are we so intentional about healing generational trauma? I have been saying this for a while now, from generational trauma to generational healing. You've been saying it. It's your heart and your desire too. We're just going to start off and kind of just cover a few reasons. Why in the world do we put ourselves through this?
Yeah.
And I want to say, not just privately, but you and I have chosen to go public. And yes, we consciously make that choice knowing that sometimes there's some pushback on it.
Yeah, it's not an easy journey. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how the path to healing is unknown. When we get on the path, we don't know what's coming. We have no idea how long it will take. We don't know the things that we will have to face or experience, but we just keep taking one step after another. And here we are.
Yeah. When we were talking about this specific topic, I had this picture in my mind of these two different hooks that we could maybe find ourselves on. And they're kind of one extreme and the other extreme. But, when we're looking at generational trauma, we're going back into our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, like these generational themes and patterns that we can often see, I'm going to say, pretty clearly, especially as we age and we look at the trajectory of the generations. And there's nuance in there, and I get it. On these hooks that I saw was, okay, you have one hook over here. I'll just take myself for an example of maybe in my 30s, 40s, thinking, okay, I'm already noticing I got some issues. I got issues. And other people have issues with me. Is that just a big, no big deal? And so this hook over here might be, oh, it has nothing to do with the past, or don't waste your time going back to the past, or, you're just looking for excuses. And the problem with staying on that hook is you actually begin to turn against yourself with a lot of shame and a lot of self-contempt. Because if there is no connection, well, then it's just all 100% because you're a screw up.
Right.
And so the other hook, right? So it's all my fault. There's no connection to the past. The other hook would be you do go back to the past only. And all you see and all you feel is the generational trauma and how bad it is and how angry you are, and you can get stuck in unforgiveness and life can never be good because of that. So we got these two extremes here, Sher. How do we find ourselves showing up and saying, I think I need help?
Yeah, it's just such an important topic. And I think I will just say it's hard because we have all of our reasons why we don't go back, right? We have all of the ways that our family systems have functioned to keep us from going back and realizing, hey, there are some things back there that weren't right between my parents and their parents. That's the closest, for most of us, that would be the closest relationship that we would be able to observe, the way that my parents related to their parents. Oh, there are some things there that, I wonder what's going on there. And then we can begin to see, the way that my parents relate with their parents, I see some similarities with the way that I'm relating now to my parents. I'm trying to remember the question you asked me, Kandace. What is the question you asked me?
Yeah. So, how do we get off of the extreme of not getting stuck in the past or the other extreme of thinking the past has nothing to do with today?
Right. Yeah. The first thing I will say is we do get stuck in the past. We are stuck in the past. Like that's our normal. We don't know how to do life any other way than what we experienced. Until then, we begin to have other exposure, which might happen in junior high or high school when we have a person or people that begin to show us life in a different way. So we can begin to notice that, oh, there are some things about my family system that I don't want to keep repeating. So how do we not get stuck back there? That's your question. And how do we also not just pretend that everything is perfect?
Yes. Yes. I like that you're bringing up even those initial, because I had a memory come up as a child. It's just your normal. But I do remember, I think I was in fourth or fifth grade. I remember thinking, wait, why does it feel so different with this family?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think a child does begin to kind of start feeling different from maybe the way they think it is, which is still not, it's still not a full perspective. Because, I mean, obviously, every family, there's no perfect families, is what I want to say. But not every family has your story share or my story.
But we all have stuff.
Right.
We all have brokenness. We all have unhealed wounds to one degree or another. Maybe some, not so much. And they're probably not listening to our podcast anyway. So we bless them, but we're not talking to them. But when we do have stuff that creeps in and is affecting our life and our relationship, that was for me. Like I began to recognize, like, there are some things about the way that I show up in my relationships that I don't like. Like, I'm not liking this about me, or some ways that I feel emotionally, like the lifelong struggle that I have had with emptiness and loneliness. Like
Mhm.
I wanted to be free from that, and I just didn't know what to do. I grew up kind of from junior high on. I grew up in the church. And so I kind of did latch on to scripture passages that really talked about be this way or don't be that way. And in some ways there was a lot of help in my experience in the church in those high school years, but it didn't actually help me find healing from the
Yeah.
generational trauma that I experienced and that my parents experienced, and most likely that their parents experienced, though I don't know I do not know the stories of my grandparents. As I began to recognize, like, oh, there are some things that in the ways that I'm showing up that I don't like, I felt compelled to want to deal with that. And I became quite intentional and purposeful. I was really never drawn toward once I became aware, I was not drawn toward the hook of, I'm going to just perpetuate keeping secrets and hiding. Well, I guess I will say I was pretty adept at hiding, pretending, and performing. So, maybe
Hmm.
I was on that hook more in more ways than I even would say at first glance. Yeah,
Yeah, but I think your awareness is you saying, I went off that hook.
yeah.
And to do that, it meant looking back. I want to mention a few. You and I kind of went through some different ways that we break out of family patterns and what those family patterns are. So I'm just going to kind of name a few right now, just to maybe just bring more understanding of why we're having this conversation of why we break off generational trauma or heal generational trauma. There's family patterns of abuse of all kind, sexual, physical, psychological, spiritual, religious abuse. misuse of power, where there's just domineering, everybody else subservient. The devaluing of the feminine, of women, of children can be chronic shame, chronic poverty. And like you mentioned, secrecy, incest, suicide, addictions. Really, the list can be way more. We talked about that our parents and our grandparents did not have the kind of resources that we have today, right? That we're hearing about trauma, right?
Yeah.
Like we're hearing about the brain, the body, how we're affected. And gosh, I'm just thinking about the ways that our parents and our grandparents coped. I mean, they had trauma too.
Right. And they didn't have the resources, and they just staying alive even took more time and energy, right? they
Yeah.
they didn't even have as much time available to journal or reflect. We talked a long time about this before we pushed the record button today, Kandace, because I think we are both clear that we don't excuse our parents for the things that they did that perpetuated dysfunctional family systems and for the ways that they did pass down trauma to us. But we do have a lot of compassion for the truth that the accessibility of resources was just so much diminished from what we have today. Even if they wanted to, even if they recognize things that they wanted to break free from, I'm not sure what they would have found available to do that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Adam Young right now because I love the way, and you can look up his podcast. I remember when I first started listening to him because I had these thoughts of, okay, I knew the ways that I had been harmed, yet I had this fear of, if I name these things as truth, am I dishonoring? So this is a big deal, especially in the church. And so I'm so thankful that, my understanding, and even listening to Dan Allender at times, that honor is telling the truth. And that doesn't mean that we have to blast it publicly in order to try to provoke shame. If we can't tell our truth, we stay stuck in the past, and we have all kinds of messages that will not get transformed until we can tell the truth.
And I heard this statement years ago, and I just know that it is so true. Dysfunctional systems, dysfunctional family systems get healthy one person at a time. And it requires one person to say, hey, wait, there's something wrong here. I'm going to pursue finding a different way. And then when that one person does that, it disrupts the whole system because the rest of the family does not. The system, their sense of homeostasis is disrupted because of that one person who maybe tells a secret or tells a secret out loud, just even to the family, right? Like names something out loud that everybody already even knows, right? Mm-hmm. But as soon as we begin to break the rules of the family system, it is a huge invitation to the next person, and then the next person, and then the next person. But until one person takes that step, the dysfunctional system will just continue.
I'm holding whoever this one person is right now, and here's what's coming to me. The way we do that, nobody does it perfectly, but I do know that having people who can truly help you and hold those stories and those secrets, like it's called containment, right? To where you begin to be able to process and come to the truth of the stories. And those who have tried to do that alone in a lot of dysregulation, and the truth is they're speaking the truth, but the way it's being done, they can get ostracized or criticized no matter how they do it. We know that. I think I'm just feeling some sensitivity to maybe somebody who's feeling very alone. Mm-hmm. And I tried to do this. I tried to speak my truth and it did not go well.
And it's the hard situation of not showing up for Thanksgiving, right? Because you just can't be back in that system, particularly. Well, I guess I'm going to say this, and this is maybe not a true statement, but I'm going to say particularly if you have been in the role of being the scapegoat and then you begin to recognize that I have carried the blame of the family system my whole life, and I just cannot do it anymore. To even go back home for Christmas is just agonizing. And so then if you don't go home, you're not understood. Well, what do you mean you're not coming home? And we always come home. And then you're the bad person. And then, oh yeah, they're making a big old thing about things that happen, right? So yes, Kandace, like the person who takes that first step, like it's hard. It's very, very difficult to be in the position where you are the big disruptor of your generational system of trauma.
I think there's just always that transition. I used the word pioneer earlier when we were talking. It's like there's new lands of healing to be explored, but it takes someone to go out into the unknown. And not that there won't be unknown stuff for the other people in the family that may join you, but at least maybe you've carved out a little bit of a path. And that's another reason why we choose to stay and doing this work, even though it's really hard sometimes, is that we want to leave a legacy of courage and fighting for our healing and for our kids and our grandkids and maybe our great grandkids that we never meet. And yeah, that is more important to me than creating, don't get me wrong, I think creating wealth and leaving provision is wonderful and good, but though that in and of itself does not bring peace. Like I want to leave a legacy of more peace in the family.
Yeah. The top three emotions on the vibrational frequency is love, joy, and peace. And yes, that's what we want for our kids and our grandkids. And as much as our desires are good and strong for wanting that for our children, so often we can't provide that for them until we go back and look at our own past stories and trauma, and then work on our own stories and begin to get an established community of people who are doing this work and speaking the language and sharing the resources so that then we're able to offer that to our kids and then to our grandkids.
I know we're getting ready to close out. I just want to, I'm feeling a little emotional right now. I had a moment earlier today. I was just outside. I was getting water out of our well area for watering my houseplants because I found out that my houseplants aren't doing well because I'm giving it the water from my okay, I won't get into the details of that, but I was just outside and it's beautiful. I was looking at the big blue sky and I was hearing the birds and I was just getting this water. And all of a sudden my body felt this surge of joy. And I remember, just thinking a few years ago how it felt like everything was falling apart. And I just I'm so glad I didn't give up when I thought everything was falling apart.
Yeah. And your impact, Kandace, in the lives of your kids and your grandkids is, just the little bit that I know, so much goodness and so much beauty there.
Thank you for being with me in that.
Such an honor and right back at you.
Well, we're going to come back next week and I will let our listeners know I invited Sher to let me kind of interview her. I've known Sher now for 5 years. And one of the things that just always sticks out to me is her courage on her healing journey. And so I asked her if I could interview her. And so Sher, we're going to come back. You don't know my questions. Honestly, I don't even know all my questions, but you know me.
We're going to gab. We're just going to gab.
But yeah, so love you so much, friend. Good to be with you today.
Love you too.
Thank you for listening to Processing Trauma Out Loud. Make sure to check out the show notes for links to suggested resources and social media. Like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our weekly content. And if you don't mind, take a moment to rate and review us. Your feedback is extremely valuable and contributes to the success of this podcast. One last thing. If you have found this podcast helpful in any way, or if you have questions on how to take the next steps on your healing journey, please reach out to us via email at KandaceSher@gmail.com. That's KandaceSher@gmail.com. Our sound engineer is Jeremiah Jones of Auditory LLC. We welcome you to join us for more conversations soon. Take care.